all, thanks to all of you for being here, and thanks to our viewers for tuning in to this important opportunity to discuss how our region functions as a regional economy. My name is Ralph Schultz. I'm the CEO of the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, and one of the things that's been proven over years and years of research is that the national economy is really an amalgamation of regional economies, that it's regional economies that drive the national economy and not vice versa. So a discussion about how this region collaborates and cooperates on regional economic development is a very important discussion if we're going to continue to build the prosperity, improve the quality of life, and help the people that live in this community to realize their ambitions in the economy. This is a region of 1.8 million people. And those 1.8 million people depend on the executive leadership of this region to create an environment where they can prosper. As you will hear in the presentation, this region enjoys a low cost of living as compared to other parts of the country. It enjoys a high per capita income as compared to other parts of the country. That creates the opportunity for the people who live here to invest in education, entertainment, their families, their businesses, and that's an environment that we want to continue to maintain and grow. So let's start a little bit at the beginning and create a historical context of this economic region. There was a time back in the 1700s, the 1800s, when the economic region was a riverbank on the Cumberland. And you could communicate by yelling down the riverbank, and business people got together and created the economy basically by their personal interaction. And that was the beginning of the Nashville area as an economic region. Fast forward then to the future, into the 1960s, and this economic region became the county, the Davidson County area. An important feature of the 1960s created the platform for the economic growth that we now enjoy, and that's the consolidation of metro government. Prior to the consolidation of metro government, Davidson County was a collection of small communities. But when consolidated government occurred, it created a stable platform for economic growth because it created a uniformity and a consistency and a sharing of the burden that allowed this area to develop over time. So when that consistency and stability was created, it created the opportunity then for people to be attracted to this area, for businesses and jobs to be attracted to this area. Now, as we fast forward to the present time, we have a 10-county regional area. That's 10 counties that have economic development happening within their particular political jurisdiction. So the idea of collaboration and cooperation among those 10 counties is very important. Back in the 60s, the consolidation of Davidson County meant that there was a formal declaration of that collaboration in the county. The informal declaration of that collaboration is really important to continuing to grow our platform. So again, historically, 1989, the Wall Street Journal writes an article, and it says, "The cities of the South are growing, but Nashville is stalled. Nashville is stagnant." Community leaders got together and said, that's intolerable. We need to grow, we need to continue to build our prosperity, and they began to create a conscious plan for that prosperity. Elected officials, private individuals, and businesses all combined to create what was then called the Partnership 2000 Plan. And that was a conscious 5-year plan with intention to say, here's how we can grow our economy to the advantage of everyone in this area. So what's happened over that ensuing 20 years? Well, as you see in this slide, many things that we have come to regard as natural to our regional economy didn't exist 20 years ago in 1990. 20 years ago, there were no pro sports teams in Nashville. There was no Hemlock Semiconductor in the region, no Renaissance Center, no Cool Springs. The very center of our #1 industry in healthcare in Cool Springs didn't even exist. When you look at the Southwest relationship, a very important feature of our regional economy, that airport and that travel in and out of this region didn't exist. GM wasn't here. The Music City Star wasn't here. The Leaf development that's taking place with Nissan, none of that was here in 1990. All of those things have developed over that last 20 years. They've all had a pronounced impact on the prosperity of this region. So here's our track record over those 20 years. And this ranks among the best in the world. Last February we were invited to attend a one-day session up in Chicago of 8 cities that were best practices in regional development from around the world. That included Seattle, Minneapolis, Chicago, and Nashville, but it also included Turin, Italy, Barcelona, Spain, Munich, Germany, Seoul, Korea. We were one of those best practice regional development regions. We were there because of these results. 230,000 jobs created over that 20-year span, 600 companies recruited, and many others expanding their operations. A 60% population growth. When you think of where the population was centered from the 60s to the 90s, and you look at the population growth that's occurred in those 10 counties, that population growth is really key to providing the workforce that causes those businesses to expand here and to relocate here. So we have a great track record of regional development. Now, what else did we have in that economic performance? Well, look at these numbers. Nashville residents, these regional residents, enjoy 109% of the U.S. average in discretionary income. A cost of living that's lower than the national average of 88%. That creates for every household that opportunity to invest in things they choose to invest in, whether it's entertainment, homes, businesses, education, their children, whatever it might be. There's a greater opportunity to retain those financial resources and spend them as people wish. Jobs in the Middle Tennessee outpaced the state in employment growth over the last 20 years. You'll see that more in material that I'll be showing in just a moment. Education attainment, so key to maintaining that 109% per capita income level. More than 80% of the adults have a high school diploma in all 10 counties. In the past, there were numerous counties that hadn't achieved that level of education attainment. And then, of course, one of the features of our economic region, a low tax burden. Part of the way we maintain those low taxes is by continuing to expand that tax base. And that's part of what growth gives us. So as you look at this graph, what you see is that the Middle Tennessee region is the driver of the state's economy. In all but 2 categories, Middle Tennessee leads the state in performing in this economy. But look at some of those numbers. The GDP, almost 1/3 of the state's GDP is centered in this state. Employment growth of 124.9, 125%. When you look at that number, what you need to know is that as the state has lost jobs in other portions of the state, those jobs have been replaced in Middle Tennessee. So Middle Tennessee continues to be an employment engine. Look at that bottom shaded category of R&D, university and college expenditures. 57.4% of the R&D that's taking place at university and colleges is centered in Middle Tennessee. Why is that an important economic indicator? Because those ideas created in R&D generate business activity. They generate jobs. They generate opportunities. And 57% of that innovative and creative R&D is happening right in this mid-state area. So mid-state is the economic powerhouse of the state. We've got, again, a track record of success. All of this economic activity has entered the mid-state economy in the last 20 years. And again, these have become household names in this region. We depend on these businesses to help us create that economic prosperity. When you look at where the jobs are occurring from July 2009 to June 2011, you see it spread throughout that economic region. 45% of the jobs being created in the core of the region of Davidson County, but 55% of those jobs being created in other portions of the region. So this is a very important aspect of driving how we achieve economic growth and prosperity in the future. So we look at other cities that are also growing, and we like to see what they're doing and compare ourselves to them. Austin, Texas, Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham. These are all cities that businesses are considering when they're also considering moving to Nashville, or they're also businesses that Nashville-based businesses will consider expanding in. So we compare ourselves to them. And one important feature of that comparison is that if you look at the data, 20 years ago, we couldn't compete with these benchmark cities. In every one of the 9 categories that we measure, we were well below performance in competing against those cities. But by 2010, we are exceeding the economic performance of those cities. Again, that happens because of collaboration, leadership, investment in growth, and a communication among us all about how do we want to grow? What do we want our community to be like? And then consciously and intentionally pursuing that. This is where the Nashville region grows in its economy. These are 5 categories, 5 industry sectors that Nashville has historically performed well in. For those that ask, where are the jobs? This is where the jobs are. These are the categories of where the jobs are. Healthcare is the #1 industry for this region, measuring capital and employment level. Music, entertainment, and creative is crucial to Nashville because that's what we're known on a worldwide basis to be. That's important because in today's young and professional workforce, that young professional workforce wants to locate in cities that have creative options, cultural options, that are expanding opportunities, not limiting opportunities. So when music and entertainment is the brand of this region, it draws all kinds of people and businesses to this area. Corporate operations, a strength. We've had a string of announcements over the years of corporate businesses that are moving headquarters here and substantial operations here. Supply chain management is something, because of our geographic location, we're an attractive place for that supply chain management to occur. And then finally, manufacturing. Manufacturing is very key. We all know the trends in manufacturing going offshore, but as exchange rates change and as workforce is educated, advanced manufacturing becomes a possibility for us as a growth area. That's important because there are many more multipliers to the economy. A dollar invested in manufacturing returns many more dollars to the local economy than service industry does. So that's an important focus for us as well. How do we achieve growth in those categories? We do it by undertaking these activities, but let me draw your attention to the fact that regional collaboration bridges all of those strategic areas. A region has attributes that exist in portions of the region that don't exist in other portions of the region. And when we all bind together and work together, the whole region benefits from those positive attributes. In some cases, there's workforce present that can be spread across the entire region. In other cases, there's entertainment and cultural opportunities that exist in one portion of the region but don't exist in other portions of the region. There are natural resources that exist in some parts of the region that don't exist in other parts of the region. When you take all of those assets and combine them, it results in 1.8 million people enjoying prosperity, high per capita income, and great options for their investment and development. So regional is very key, and we'll come back to some of those issues you see listed in regional collaboration a little bit later. But look at economic diversity. Nashville is known to perform at a better rate. This region performs as an economy better than other cities in this recession because of our economic diversity. Our economic diversity gives us balance and stability. So when we see stable real estate prices, and we're known for that, we're not a boom or bust real estate place. You can buy a home easier and it retains the value to a greater level in this region because we have economic diversity and more stability in our economy. That economic diversity continues to be a key to why we outperform other regions in the country. The U.S. Mayor's Conference has said that Nashville is the 5th fastest region emerging from the recession. It's because of that economic diversity. Now we move to one of our most urgent challenges, and that's talent development. Despite the fact that we've experienced higher unemployment over the last couple of years during the recession, the fact is that as Nashville emerges more quickly from the recession than other cities, workforce is a real key to our future prosperity. The dynamic of a balanced number of jobs being offered to a workforce that is capable of doing those jobs is key to growth. When either of those get out of sync, then the economy suffers in general because jobs go away. So maintaining a great workforce, this is why the Chamber has identified education as its #1 priority. And when you look at the dynamics of the exiting boomer workforce and a smaller group of professionals entering the workforce at a younger age, you realize why we have to maximize every opportunity with young people entering the workforce to fill those workforce needs. So talent development's really key. Place and livability. When I entered the workforce in 1974, I found a job and I moved to where the job was. Today's workforce decides where they want to live and then they find the job when they get there. If we're going to be attractive to a future workforce to fuel our growing prosperity, then we have to have a place that attracts those young families and those young people, and that's why we focus on place and livability as a strategy. So those are our prosperity drivers. Here's what we look for in the future. 151,000 new jobs by 2019. The Chamber with other organizations created a workforce study, projected conservative job growth over that time. Just yesterday we identified the fact that job growth in this region has gone up 1.6%. When you compare that against those other benchmark cities, not only do we exceed their performance, but in most cases their job growth is still negative. Ours is positive by a substantial margin. From a workforce perspective, though, we are going to have a gap of 24,000 workers, especially in categories like IT. This region needs to collaborate on meeting that need of developing that workforce. There will be $10 billion more in gross product in the next 5 years, and again, the better our economy performs as a region, the better our quality of life as a whole. And there will be 60,000 individuals moving into our area, and frankly, we're depending on that. In-migration and immigration are important features for being able to fulfill or fill out the workforce. So if we want to continue our march toward economic prosperity, we have to have that workforce, we have to have those jobs, and as the labor force shrinks because the boomers are moving on, we have to find that talent somewhere. And that in-migration to the area is very key. This slide gives you a picture of how interactive and how interdependent the region is. These are regional commuting patterns, but they're also indicative of the fact that businesses and consumers don't recognize county boundaries. They move throughout the region on a constant basis. So again, coming back to the attributes, if certain attributes exist in certain areas, access to natural resources or access to workforce or access to jobs or a denser entertainment lifestyle, we're going to find those consumers and businesses moving across those county lines to circulate throughout the region. This map also indicates the urgent need for a cohesive and coherent regional transportation strategy. As inflation rises and as energy costs rise, it will become more, regional economies will become more dependent on regional transit. And having a developed regional transit strategy will be key to attracting workforce and attracting jobs to the area. So what are our challenges ahead, and what are the likely areas of cooperation among our regional leadership? You know, the creation of a mayor's caucus was a very important feature in this region's opportunity to develop economically as a region, because it brought together all of the mayors to be able to talk about those issues and those developmental opportunities that exist and collaborate and cooperate. And so these challenges are those topics that may be on their list moving forward in the future as we look at that regional collaboration and cooperation. First of all, infrastructure. You saw that the economic activity of the state is centered in the mid-state. This infrastructure number relates to the fact that the growth is happening in the mid-state. 31% of all the costs for needed infrastructure in the state are centered in this area. This means roads, this means water, this means sewers, this means all of those things that our quality of life are dependent on a basic level. So infrastructure challenges are important and key. Education and talent. There are portions of this region that provide outstanding education. There are portions of this region that need to improve their education performance. But wherever that performance is weak or wherever that performance is positive, it affects the entire region. The key here is to get the whole region performing on an educational basis, and that means driving good ACT scores and good graduation rates and having people exit schools ready to continue their education or go to work in a high per capita position. That education and talent development is really key. Higher ed will be of increased focus going forward because businesses are looking for post-secondary graduates. They're looking for people who have certificate programs. They're looking for people that have 2-year degrees. They're looking for people that have 4-year degrees. All of that's going to be really key. Nashville is an entrepreneurial place. That creates innovation opportunities. Those ideas that entrepreneurs have, or research institutions have, or businesses who do R&D have, those are opportunities for businesses and jobs to operate in this area. This region needs a pipeline for helping those businesses to plant themselves here. It's amazing how many times we see great ideas created in R&D facilities that end up transferring to other cities because they don't have the infrastructure here that they need to develop. So that's going to be a focus for this region. And then regional policy and fiscal strategy. One of the things we talked about as we examined consolidated government in the 60s was the fact that that sharing of the burden and that stability financially in the region was an important basis. When businesses are looking for a place to locate, they're looking for governmental stability because that creates an environment that they can prosper within. So the discussions among mayors about how to coordinate fiscal strategy is really important as you develop regional assets. So how do we continue to grow? This is a proven formula over the last 20 years. You have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy of cooperation. You have to have goals set that you require accountability to reach. You have to tackle the immediate needs, and for this region, transit is an immediate need. Continuing a legacy of success, it's another way of saying as you build momentum, you want to keep momentum. You don't want to lose that momentum. And then finally, civic organizations like the Chamber or Cumberland Region Tomorrow or the chambers throughout this region are great resources for elected leadership and business leadership to tap into to help realize these plans. So as you look forward into the future, when another group is meeting 20 years from now to talk about What did we achieve 20 years ago that we now have up on the map that has increased the prosperity of this whole region? What will those things be? What will we do during our time of leadership to increase that prosperity and to bring those things and create those things in this region that cause people to enjoy a higher quality of life and realize the potential that they feel? Well, today we have a great panel to discuss these issues. To get us all started, the first question I'd like to ask you is, why do you feel, and I'd like each of you to answer this, why do you feel that regional economic development or regional collaboration is important to economic development?
Want me to start with that?
Mayor Graves is the chairman of the Mayor's Caucus.
I'll be glad to start with that.
Okay.
Well, you know, Ralph, I think you've been referencing transportation systems, workforce development, keeping our tax rate low. If these are common issues that we all face, if we address them on a regional basis, it makes us more attractive. And it makes us attractive to new industry and businesses that we might want to court to locate in this area. A rising tide floats all boats. If one of us is successful, it makes another part of us successful. If a business or industry comes into Rutherford County, everybody might not choose to live in Rutherford County. Some of them might choose to come up and locate in my area. There might be a spin-off business that comes in that doesn't locate in that area. So it's important for us to solve these things regionally.
Mayor Burgess?
Well, I agree with everything that she has just said there. You know, all of us, you know, we've sort of grown up living in our own little environment and thinking about not much beyond the boundaries of our jurisdiction, whether it's a city or a county. And a lot of us are still thinking that way. But as time goes by and as we see all the things that are happening with the ability of our people to be mobile and their selection of where they live and where they work, it's really imperative for all of us to really focus on them, the citizens. It's important that they have an improved quality of life opportunity, and all of this working together just gives them opportunities to share in what's happening in each of our counties, whether it's activities of recreation, dining, shopping, or otherwise, and employment. But all of that together keeps us focused on trying to help people really develop and improve, and if the quality of life is good in this whole region, it's going to attract everybody from other locations. We need these 24,000 people you described to come be with us, to come live with us, to help us provide the job talent that we need. So it's just something that we must do to enhance the overall growth for now and for the future.
Jerome?
I'd like to tag along with Mayor Graves on her comment. That axiom that we sort of live by in economic development is the rising tide lifts all boats, and with today, with the global economy that we have, that businesses can choose anywhere in the world they really want to be, and they can do that without us even knowing that they're looking because of all the information that's available out there. We have to differentiate ourselves, and one of the differentiators for the Middle Tennessee area is that collaborative effort. And recently read an article that was produced in a newsletter by one of our communities, and it was about a corn farmer who won first prize every year at a state fair with his corn. And when the reporter was asking him about how he did this, and one of the things he said, he shared his seed with all of his adjoining farmers. And the reporter thought that was a little odd and asked him why, and he said, because of pollination, if my neighbors don't have good corn, that's going to affect my corn. So I think that's the collaborative effort that we really look at today in the region that we're in. We have to work together. We each have strengths that are different than the other, but as a team and a support, we have a solid regional effort going on.
Ed Cole.
I'd like to focus on the people side of it. I think the economic interdependence of a region is critical, as has been mentioned. But one of the assets, and it certainly relates to our livability in Middle Tennessee, is that there is a naturalness to the Middle Tennessee region that people feel. And to transmit that to people coming in new positions, I think is a real important challenge for us, and I think we have an advantage in the ability to do that. Where people choose to live, where jobs are located, where sports take place, where restaurants are located, where schools are, all of those things can't occur in one city or in one county, and we know that. These 10 counties of Middle Tennessee provide that whole menu of opportunities for quality of life and the ability to participate economically in prosperity. One of the experiences I had with Cumberland Region Tomorrow in the very early days was spending time with groups of people in their homes, in planning commissions, in city council, county commissions. And that came up over and over again. We are Middle Tennesseans. May live in Nashville, may live in Gallatin, may live in Rutherford County, may live in Dixon, and there are really cool things about those places where I choose to live. But what is my identity? My identity is I'm from Middle Tennessee. So I think that's a real asset that we have. It's a core component of our regional work together, is to build upon natural. We're not trying to create a region in Middle Tennessee that really shouldn't exist. I think the region of Middle Tennessee exists. It's our job to make that power a part of the quality of life that we share.
You know, recently we've seen some listings about the Middle Tennessee area that, first of all, we found out from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that they consider Tennessee the business-friendliest state in the country. We've heard from the U.S. Mayor's Conference that this region is the 5th fastest emerging region from the recession. We've seen in Forbes magazine that we're the 3rd most likely boom area of the country over the next 10 years. How do you feel as executive leadership, as the people who elect you look to you for executive leadership? How do you feel that you as a mayor's caucus and you as a group of executive leaders for this entire region need to collaborate to continue that kind of momentum? Any of you, but I'd love to hear from the mayors first.
Well, I feel a lot more confident by working within a group of other mayors that have great leadership qualities and experiences. This, you know, doing this by myself is really almost an impossible job to just accomplish what we need to bring everybody together to the thought process that really we have to cooperate. So this creates a synergy, at least it does with me, within all of us in this region that allows us all to gain strength from one another. And without that kind of process, I don't really think we're going to be effective, because it's somehow we have to transmit that back to our own leaders within our own communities, and that's really a far piece from getting where we need to be with that piece of that. So it starts with us, and that generates enough energy within all of us and synergy that we can hopefully spread and push this back. It's going to be imperative that we do that, because we've got some real difficult decisions that we need to make about transportation and transit, et cetera, that's going to take that permeating the whole structure of every one of our governments.
And I agree with what Ernest is saying. Let's just take mass transit, because that's been one of the largest issues that we're dealing with, particularly in the Mayor's Caucus. Each one of us have a different and unique community. Even though we have a lot of similarities, we still have uniqueness. And when a county mayor or a city mayor says, well, you know, this is going to be an issue in my particular area, it helps us develop a plan to try to meet all of those needs. If I only develop a plan that meets Sumner's needs, then how can that mass transit system grow into all the other regions? Because I haven't taken everything into consideration. But if we listen to Rutherford County has these issues, Williamson County has these issues, and we start planning to address all of those issues on the front end as best we can from the beginning, then we can develop a system that probably has a high likelihood of success. Otherwise, we're going to get one spoke developed, and all of a sudden we're going to hit a hurdle because we never talked about it, and we can't expand the system. So it is important that we know each area's uniqueness and how to solve those problems.
Yeah. You know, Jerome and Ed, both of you are part of organizations that are charged with economic development from a private perspective. As you work within different communities and as you work with Mayor's Caucus, what are some of the advantages that come from working with an organization like the Mayor's Caucus? How is that different from working, Jerome, in your case particularly, with other communities that don't have that same cohesive arena to have the discussion?
Well, I think that one of the things that's more evident about 10 years ago when after 9/11 we had a lot of companies that were based in large cities that began to look at us as a viable alternative, and especially with the global economy, we're actually getting more of that now than before, the cost of doing business. One of the things that comes up constantly is a mass transportation issue, because they are used to that in Chicago, in New York. And so knowing that we've got a caucus that's looking at that, something that we can build a future on with that, is very important to these companies moving into this area.
And Ed, the mission of your organization, and how does it connect with the Mayor's Caucus?
It connects very, very closely. I think that historically, in the transportation world, we've tended to say that somebody else will take care of transportation. If it's a local street, the Public Works Department will take care of it. If it's an interstate highway, TDOT will take care of it. I think now we know that that is no longer the answer. It's a mix of all of the resources. And the individuals that are most plugged into the mix of needs of a community are the elected mayors, the elected officials. And citizens know that. And I think having the Mayor's Caucus and the mayor speaking about transportation delivers a strong message to people that this transportation issue, including mass transit, is much more complicated than just picking up the phone and calling your Public Works Department or TDOT to make something happen that would make my daily life a little bit better. It's much more complicated than that. So the Transit Alliance, in communicating these ideas and developing local leadership, cannot do that job without knowing that the mayors have said this is a task that we should be about. And the caucus has been unbelievably strong and, as Mayor Graves said, very active in providing that background for these conversations.
So as each of you are engaged in creating this economic prosperity moving forward and providing that executive leadership, as you look around the region, what do you consider this region's greatest assets? What do we have going for us that propels us toward that economic prosperity?
Well, number one, we have a great transportation system. We want to improve it, but currently we have a great transportation system. We have an abundance of water, and oftentimes we don't stop to think about that, but that's critical to every industry that's going to come locate in your region. An abundance of water is very important. We have a low tax rate, critical. The fact that we have no state income tax is just tremendous when we are recruiting businesses and industries to come here. And the fact that our other taxes are low makes us very attractive. So I think, and I'm going to say the last thing is the work ethic of the people who live here. I've lived all over the United States, and I will tell you that the commitment of the people that work in our business and our industries and our retail store, I believe, outshines people in other parts of the country. They have good, solid values, and I think that's something that Tennesseans should be very proud of.
I'll just add one thing there. I think we've got a great educational foundation within our whole system within Middle Tennessee. And we started with our K through 12 systems. I mean, some of us are doing good, some of us are doing better, but we can improve on that, and we'll improve on that. But continuing on with the technology centers, our community colleges, our higher education, our colleges, we've got tremendously a wealth of schools in Davidson County, really private institutions that are really outstanding. We've got Tennessee State University, and yes, in our great county, we've got the Tennessee State University, of which I am a graduate, with the largest undergraduate enrollment in our state. Wow. Tremendous opportunities to provide those skilled employees and leaders within our prospective clients and companies that are here and will come with us. I mean, we just have a great opportunity to use those resources to provide the talent, skills that really we're going to need to grow this economy.
Jerome, as you mentioned, you talk to businesses from around the world about multiple states in this region. As you interface with them, what are the things that they really zero in on as the great opportunities and assets of this region?
I think the first thing that they say is, I believe Mayor Graves said it first, is our people the genuine friendliness and openness for business to come in here and grow. I'm not sure they get that sense everywhere else. There's also a second thing that I always hear is from the team aspect, because of the communities that are involved, the state officials that are involved, and they don't see that in other areas of the country that they visit. They have to go to individually to different locations to get answers and responses to their needs. But an underlying part of that we don't hear, but I think that it's very positive, is the diversity of industry that is in the Middle Tennessee area. The list that you had earlier with your market industries, all of them are very sustainable. We have great strength in each one of those. Healthcare, obvious, automotive. We're in the crossroads of a lot of the automotive industry now that has relocated to our area over the past 20 years. We're right in the middle of that. Data centers, we're in a seismic area that is very attractive for data centers. It's the second most attractive part of the country. Also, if you look at the music industry and what it brings to our area, that creative talent, that those 8,000 plus songwriters that are out there that are doing other things during the day are great employees for these folks when they're looking in our area. So it's a lot of diversity. It's a lot of different things. We come out faster. We go in later in economic times. So I think people look at that as a real solid area for them to be attracted to.
Ed, any comment?
I think the strength of the people, I think the blessed resources that we have add together in that, and this is a real, I think, important spot. Some call it the sweet spot. We don't have crisis levels, and I'll talk here about transportation. We don't have crisis levels that require us to spend our time digging out of problems that other parts of the country, other regions have. We may think we have traffic congestion in Middle Tennessee, and I know Mayor Burgess, coming from Murfreesboro to Nashville, would say we do have traffic congestion. But on a relative basis, for sort of recurring congestion, we still have the opportunity to make things better without spending a whole lot of money trying to dig out of a traffic mess. So I think one of the real things that we have in our favor is the opportunity right now to build upon our strengths and to divert as much of our resource base into that future vision that we've been talking about in our region, as opposed to having to bail out of problems from the past. And many regions don't have that opportunity, and it's because of our people, and it's because of our natural resources that we've had, and being good stewards. Our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents were tremendous stewards of the resources in Middle Tennessee. And that's the gift I think we have for just a little while right now.
Mayor Graves, you mentioned earlier that you provide executive leadership to a constituency that elects you, and that they're a part of a broader regional group. Shifting gears to a different level, you've also been very senior leadership at the state legislative level. Are there things that will need to happen at the state legislative level or with regards to the state that are going to encourage regional collaboration, or do we have a great circumstance now where we're not going to have to interact much with the state legislature to create the collaboration we're looking for?
Oh, absolutely. It is a coordinated effort, Ralph. Even recently, we reauthorized the RTA. That was legislation that had to go before the state. They had to bless it, and now we're endorsing it, city and county in this region. So it's a hand-in-glove effort. But it's not only at the state. We have to work with our congressional leaders because they have to understand what we're trying to accomplish. And certainly, we're going to be looking for financial support from the federal level, from the state level, and they have to understand why it's important to us. And the other thing is, when you speak as one voice, when all of us are on the same page, saying the same thing to our state representatives, to our state senators, to our congressional delegation, and they're hearing that top to bottom, there's a wow factor there. I mean, it's like, whoa, something is going on, and we need to get on board, and we need to know what this is about, and this is what our people want. And elected officials like to make people happy. They are not in the business to make people unhappy. We try to meet the needs of the people who elect us and still be responsible, but we're all about trying to do what the people who elect us want from us. So I think the Mayor's Caucus and some of the regional boards that we have are moving us leaps and bounds down the road towards being able to accomplish the goals that we are setting.
Mayor Burgess, as we've discussed some of the assets of this region, and we've seen listed in the presentation some of the areas we think the challenge opportunities for the future for cooperation, infrastructure, education, et cetera. As you look out into the future over the next 10 to 20 years, what categories of collaboration can you see occurring among the Mayor's Caucus and the various counties? Is that the right list? Are infrastructure, education, economic development, are those things the right list, or is there a different list?
Well, I think those things are the right list, and I think there's some really important things there. We must focus on those. Mayor Graves mentioned that we're blessed with water in this great state of Tennessee, and we are, but it's still a limited resource, and it's something we're going to have to continue to deal with. It is imperative that we all work together, and when she talks about collaboration within our government leaders, starting at the state level and the congressional level, this is even going to be more important as time goes forward. So out into the future, 10 or 20 years, and maybe even before that, the ability to access water freely and abundantly is a major issue at hand, and TVA is now cooperating with us completely.
Well, when you think about it, we have collected in front of us, if we buy the idea, and research demonstrates the fact that regional economies create national economies, and executive leadership creates the vitality in those regional economies. We have right here in front of us the people who are creating that vitality. And so, do you have questions that you would like to ask these very crucial people?
I'd like to ask the mayors, first of all, and whoever else wants to chime in. A lot of times when we talk about economic development and attracting investment, you all have county commissioners and city council members that you deal with, and what you will see in many instances is, well, I support this company coming here and I would be happy to approve a tax abatement, but I want to make sure that X percent are our county residents before I sign on the dotted line. Or if there's a company that's expanding, it's we'll pay a percent of the benefits, but we want to see, but we only have 50% of the employees are from our county, and you see that kind of going against the grain in terms of regionalism. Do you deal with that, and how do you answer those kinds of issues when you're dealing with specific investment projects?
Well, we've sort of gotten past that, thank goodness. Some years ago, we have an industrial development board like I guess every county does. But in any event, our county commission, in its wisdom some years ago, has decided that we can develop an economic model that will project, if we're going to abate taxes, we can project exactly what the return, how many multipliers we're going to get out of that. And they have set a limit. If any company or firm comes in that has a multiplier that exceeds 3 times what we're abating, then they don't have to come back to our commission for approval. In other words, it's something they can go ahead and do, the Industrial Development Board, and handle that. So yes, we're interested in jobs, but we're not focused on whether those people are going to live in Sumner County or Davidson or Williamson or Rutherford. We know what the economic impact will be for our region, for our county, and we're prepared to move forward with that. So we've been successful doing that.
And we're in the same situation. We have an IDB, just like Rutherford County does, and I would dare say that most of us probably do. We have a pilot project, payment in lieu of taxes. It's a tiered approach. It was modeled after the state of Tennessee. It's all about jobs right now, Mark. It really is. And anything that we can do to recruit industry to come here, we're going to do, but I'm going to take it a step further. We also are looking at offering abatements to companies that are expanding. Because I think you've heard the statistic, and I heard Governor Haslam say it, 86% of all new jobs created last year were from existing industry. And so it's real important also to make sure that we take care of whoever is here currently. So we offer incentives to businesses that may be expanding. We look to see what we can do to help. Sometimes the state is brought in, or TVA may be brought in. I don't know what they do exactly for existing industry, but it's all about jobs. And no, like Ernest, we've gotten way past that. It's important to understand that if it's good for Sumner County, it's probably going to be good for Rutherford County or Nashville, because those folks are going to go to Nashville for entertainment more than likely. They may go down to Rutherford County and take classes at MTSU, or their children may choose to go down to MTSU even though they're living in Sumner County. So I think what you're hearing is we now understand that all of us impact one another. We're not standalone identities.
Ralph, I'd like to add a little bit to that too, sort of behind the curtain a little bit, and I think it's a good question, Mark. But we do an ROI, and we do that. That's a collaborative effort that we do with the communities and with the state. Every part of a project is looked at as an individual project, and it's broken down, the multipliers, the effect that it's going to have in that area, and there is an ROI, and there's performance-based issues that were dealt with that. So that is, again, a part of the collaborative effort that we're able to do, and we're fortunate to have the resources with a good research team, and that we can provide a lot of that information a lot of times. So very, very true, very active part of what we do.
Another question. Before you ask that question, let me warn the panel. I'll be asking you for a 20-year view in 60 seconds or less after this question's answered. So be ready. So be ready for that. I just want to let you know in advance. It's coming.
Very good.
Go, Roddy.
What are the thoughts about what the mass transit would look like for our area going forward?
I'll be glad to answer about the mass transit, what it would look like going forward. Probably, without question, the best description of that is when the mayor's recently adopted a 2035, a 25-year out long-range transportation plan as a part of the work of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And Clarksville, the Metropolitan Planning Organization there, did the same thing. And in that is a vision of what it will look like in 2035. And in particular, it's titled A Bold Vision for Mass Transit. And in a nutshell, the vision involves mass transit on corridors that connect, much as the commuting map that Ralph showed us earlier. It involves increased circulation within areas like Gallatin and metropolitan Nashville and downtown Murfreesboro, connecting with the MTSU campus, Clarksville, and so forth. And then it involves choices, those corridors and those circulation areas, providing choices that individuals can make within those corridors. It's not about one particular solution. Light rail, streetcars, bus rapid transit, more express bus services, carpools, van pools, the commuter rail system we already have operating between Wilson County and downtown Nashville. All of those are in the mix. So the answer, the vision, is working through the choices that make the most sense for the vitality of the region, and building, as Mayor Burgess just said, building on then the economic discussion. As Jerome said, the return on investment, so that when we make decisions about how to pay for that, it's looked at as a return on investment, not something we're having to pay to the government. Because we know if that's the perception, it will be very difficult. 70% of transit votes on transit investments since 2008 have passed. And the assessment is real simple. They passed because people saw the return on investment in mass transit to the prosperity of the region. And that's the challenge I think we have.
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears here. In a few seconds, each of you, what's your view of this region 20 years from now? Not necessarily specifically, but what's the character of the region 20 years from now?
We will have grown to such a point. You just heard Ed describe what he thinks the transportation system might look like. We'll never get there unless we as a region come together and determine what a permanent funding source is. that will, on a permanent basis, sustain this. In the next 20 years, I believe that will happen. It's going to take much collaboration and cooperation in that it probably will take public votes on this in all of our counties likely. But this won't happen. We won't be economically successful until that does happen. So I believe that will happen. I believe we've got off to a great start. I think we've got a lot ahead of us to do yet, but we'll get there.
Mayor Graves.
And I'm going to piggyback off what Ernest said. I think for those of you who are sitting out there listening to us, you have a choice. We can either keep building roads and run out of space to build roads and get it complete gridlock in 10 years, or we can be proactive and we can start to develop a rail system. And Ernest is right. It is going to take a dedicated funding source. And anytime we talk about revenue, everybody gets a little bit uptight, including us. We don't like to talk about it either. But it can't happen unless we have a source of funding. We at the local level are going to be taking this issue to the state because they're going to have to embrace it. And that's where a lot of you all are going to come in. He's talking about a referendum. You all are going to have to pressure your state officials to say, this is something we want. You need to talk to your local officials, but you need to talk to the state officials because they are the hand in glove with us to be able to build this system. And beyond that, you need to talk to your congressional delegation because we're going to have some federal funding at some point along the way to be able to build this system. It's not going to happen independently. So if people want to be able to move freely among their communities, to Nashville, to Rutherford, to Williamson, to Clarksville, you all are going to have to make that decision that you're going to support whatever goes on a referendum, and you're going to have to turn out and vote for it. So I know you issue challenges to us. I'm issuing the challenge to you. And I hope after this you'll go back in your respective communities and talk about what people need to do in order to make this system move forward.
And Mayor Graves, thank you for that inspirational concluding comment for us. We want to thank here today our panelists for being with us. Mayor Joanne Graves of Gallatin, who is also the chair of the Regional Mayor's Caucus, Mayor Ernest Burgess from the Mayor of Rutherford County, who's on the executive committee of that Regional Mayor's Caucus, Jerome Terrell from TVA, and Ed Cole, the executive director of the Transit Alliance. The future of this region is greatly dependent on the leadership that you all provide. And thank you for sharing with our viewers today how they can participate as well as demonstrating how you intend to lead. So thank you very much for being with us today.
All right.